But Burton's AIM handle, as I recall, was Yum Peach Ice Cream.
What was yours, Ben?
Mine was Ben Observer. I was on there until the very end. In the late days of AIM, they had an app. And by the very end, the only two people left with the little green dots were me and Matt Dredge. I'm Ben Smith,
I'm Naeema Raza.
and this is Mixed Signals from Semaphore Media.
Today we're recording from the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, which is exuberant. The convention, not necessarily the city, I would say. They seem to be nonplussed about it all, annoyed by the traffic.
Nice enough city, though. Gets a bad rap.
I like Chicago. We'll unpack the vibes of this moment, but also do a reality check on whether the memes, momentum, and joy around Kamala could actually last all the way to November 5th. Tommy Vietor of Pod Save America and former Obama world fame will be joining us to discuss that.
He became one of the central characters in the election, helping to push out Joe Biden.
Are you saying Tommy runs the Democratic Party?
I believe the conspiracy theory is that he is the hidden hand of Barack Obama, although we'll ask him about that.
Oh, well, that's going to make Ezra very sad. I thought Ezra Klein was running the Democratic Party.
And also the hidden hand of Barack Obama. I do think the takeaway here is that Barack Obama runs the Democratic Party. That's what I learned this week.
That might be factual, or Michelle, as it were. Hi, Ben. How late were you out last night in Chicago? I feel like this is like your party town, this DNC nerdery.
So, I did the lamest thing you can do at these conventions, was just close down the CNN grill, which is where reporters and politicians who just like desperately want to be mobbed by reporters hang out.
It's very thirsty when a politician shows up at the CNN Politico grill at midnight after the convention.
I saw you there for a bit, and then did you head out with the TikTokers into the night?
No, Ben is making fun of me because I have been, fashionable as always at this convention. And yesterday, wearing a fully bright pink suit, a couple of weird things happened. One, Walter Isaacson asked me if I was part of AKA, which is Kamala Harris's sorority, because they were all, I guess, wearing pink.
The thing about Walter Isaacson is he's always just way more plugged in than you expect and knew, and we didn't, that Kamala's sorority were all wearing that particular shade of, what is it, chartreuse or something? Impressive.
It was salmon pink. I was wearing hot pink. He was good. He's good. And then what I found is I was confused for a TikToker. The thing with this Democratic National Convention is there is a lot of access to, quote, creators, as much, if not more, access for the kind of YouTube and TikTok creators and Instagram creators than there is for the kind of traditional media who have to pay or paying more money this year for these kind of studio setups around and have fewer seats at the convention. Max Tani, our colleague, has been complaining about this a little bit. But wearing a hot pink suit on a Wednesday, which, Ben, you probably don't know, but it's a Mean Girls reference.
On Wednesdays, we wear pink. Oh my God. Okay.
I missed that, but it definitely worked for you.
Oh yeah, but I was wandering all through. People weren't even checking my pass. They were just letting me in. I was in the hosts community backstage drinks area. I was in the creator lounge. There was free food and drinks being served in selfie lights. I had like a sliding door moment seeing all the other hot pink suited women. And I thought, oh, this is what I should have done 10 years ago, but now I'm late to the party.
But it was very, very striking, right? The whole convention really revolving to some degree around TikTok.
Yeah, the app that we're all trying to ban. But first, let's get our candidate in.
By the way, no one's talking about that anymore, are they?
Is it the last press convention? Is it the last convention that will rely on kind of traditional broadcast, print, et cetera, media?
Oh man, I mean, I guess I want to know what you think, because I think you believe what you're saying, and you were out all night, hyping up these TikTokers and telling them that they're the future when they're just the present, in my view. I guess feel like I've been here before too. Like, in the beginning of my career, I was a blogger when bloggers were the sort of cool new, are they going to displace the media? And, and they get a special room, and half of the people looking back are now like the most powerful journalists at the New York Times, like Ezra Klein. And the other half then and now were like a bunch of like barefoot eccentrics who were like, and I think that the power of the corporate media to absorb its enemies, its challengers, is sometimes a little underrated. And I think you may see the creators who are successful, you might see here 4 years working for NBC Universal, is my guess.
I'm not saying that these organizations are going away, and certainly I don't think the New York Times is going anywhere. But like a show is a show is a show. I think this idea that like something is a TV show or something is NBC is kind of a thing of the past. When I'm watching a show on Netflix or I'm listening to a podcast or watching a podcast on YouTube, it's all the same thing to me, which is it's a show.
Oh.
Artistically, like there are different formats and you want them to feel different and you make them differently, but like these are all just shows and they're ways that we spend our time.
There's some sense in which it's all converging. But I also think there are different lanes. Like a excited influencer out there promoting Harris isn't going to replace, in some sort of social sense, a journalist who's trying to tell you what's true and what's false.
Yes.
At different moments, some people want lies, people want the truth. There's a pendulum.
This kind of shows your cards because there are a lot of people out there who would say, I don't trust the traditional media, but I really trust XYZ creator because they've always told me the truth. Like, take someone like Jessica Yellen, for example.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
There is that sense of like, I don't trust this institution, but I trust Ezra. I don't trust this institution, but I trust whoever. And that it just, the individualization.
Yeah, and that is in some sense the biggest trend in media since the fall of the studio system, nearly 100 years ago, and now accelerating in which this shift toward individuals. That's to some degree what we're doing here instead of tapping out faceless bylines.
Yeah.
There's sort of a frenzy around the creators here, but the reality also is that TikTok propelled Harris's actual campaign. That when she got in, it was memes and it was Charlie XCX, and with the media clinging on with our fingernails, more or less.
So let's talk about that because like the vibes are good, but will it last until November 5th? That's the big question. And Ben, you had a byline that you after the RNC, you said it was the happiest place on earth, I think, right? In Milwaukee.
Yeah, this is the second just delighted, elated, happy convention I've been to this summer. I think these were the two most confident, happy, united conventions I've been to in my life, and I've been going since '04.
Which one is happier?
There was certainly a sense at the RNC, where their candidate had just survived an assassination attempt and maybe was happier, this sort of profound belief that God was on their side. Here it was less, we've been saved by God than we've been saved by Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi and that we have a shot and we're in it. I had this funny conversation. The general secretary of the British Labour Party was here, and he said to me, "It's funny because at our conventions we focus on persuading voters who voted for the Conservatives last time, but had voted for Labour in the past, and we'd like to bring them back." And
Mhm.
it seems like at your conventions you don't talk to those people at all. And it was at a moment when I think the Attorney General of Michigan was up on stage saying, "You're going to take this wedding ring off my cold, gay, dead hand," and a series of appeals that were aimed at specific Democratic groups, young people, rallying them to the cause, but
Mhm.
much less discussion of we are going to lower your grocery prices and we're going to close the border, which at some level is going to wind up being where the election is fought, maybe.
So you think they're just pandering?
Well, they're rallying the base. This is a moment of just getting Democrats back excited, and it's working incredibly well.
But see, this is where I disagree about rallying the base because I think every day of this convention has been extremely different. It has been programmed kind of to the day. And the first day, Monday, was really the kind of nostalgia day. It's all saying goodbye to Joe. We have the nostalgia of what could have been with Hillary Clinton, like what Soren Kierkegaard, the Danish philosopher, would call like,
Uh oh.
you didn't see that coming, Ben. He had that quote that was like, the greatest state of sorrow is for our memories or for our future, especially the one we didn't make. And that's kind of what the vibe was when Hillary was there. Was that way too intellectual, Ben?
No, that was great. That was great. I think
That
I think I
was
think
good.
probably all of us in that building were thinking about Kierkegaard in that moment.
This is our time, America. This is when we stand up. This is when we break through. The future is here. It's in our grasp. Let's go win it.
Tuesday, it's like kind of that is to me that was the energized day of Little John performs.
Turn out for what?
The Obamas are there, and it's really the kind of handover transition of power from the Obama world to Kamala Harris.
I want to know who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs.
We need a president who will stand up for their right to bargain for better wages and working conditions. And Kamala will be that president.
Wednesday, of course, is the day of Tim Walz. And this is where I disagree with you about rallying the base. Like, I think Wednesday was all about actually getting the people in the middle, the independents, the rest of the country to follow. And the programming was around freedom. And the biggest of Wednesday night was, of course, Oprah Winfrey, who comes in and says, I'm an independent.
So I'm calling on all you independents and all you undecideds. You know this is true. You know I'm telling you the truth, that values and character matter most of all. In leadership and in life. And more than anything, you know this is true, that decency and respect are on the ballot in 2024.
And then, of course, Thursday night, night of Kamala.
So let's get out there. Let's fight for it. Let's get out there. Let's vote for it. And together, let us write the next great chapter in the most extraordinary story ever told.
It feels so unified. I mean, there is this brewing, obviously, this brewing protest that has been building up over the course of weeks. The protests around Gaza. Coming into this, a lot of people thought, oh, this is going to be Chicago's going to be 1968 convention with cops fighting back the protesters. That hadn't yet happened as of Thursday when we're taping this. But there is like this kind of, the party has elided and like kind of moved past what was this great division.
Yeah, I mean, I think Harris addressed it in actually in some way, a very Trumpian way, a very politically blunt way. First time protesters turned up at an event of hers, she said, are you trying to help Trump win? And that's, I think for a lot of Democrats, that's a satisfying answer.
That's the kind of messaging that I don't think lasts for 100 days. That's the kind of messaging that I think makes her look strong for a moment, and then at some point,
Might not last for 100 days, but there's only 75.
well, I think let's see what happens. Is this going to be the issue that's top of mind for American voters? Perhaps not. But also, Biden has every incentive to try to reconcile this and stop, and for his own legacy, to try to really get to ceasefire, to really kind of resolve this. And she's probably doing the thing of letting Biden do this.
She has no choice. He's president of the United States. And that is really, as you say, that's really part of it. Like, he is
Yeah.
running a peace process, attempting to do this. And there's a gap between, the sort of domestic U.S. protest, media, politics, noise, and this horrific reality on the ground there that it feels at this point just increasingly totally disconnected. But also being run out of the White House. And it is a place where, Harris is going to own whatever Biden does.
Yeah. But all of it lends to the kind of question of like, is this a bubble? And what are we not seeing, right? Like, what is Donald Trump up to?
What Donald Trump's up to is doing incredible interviews with influencers.
Yes, he is deep in that creator world. He's not asking them to come to him. He's going to them. He's going on Kick. He's going on X and talking to Elon, giving interviews to Logan Paul. He's on All In, talking about crypto, well ahead of the curve.
Yeah, he's running hard at the young men who are not going to be influenced by Oprah, are not going to be influenced by the abortion focus here.
Yeah.
I mean, incredible podcast with Theo Von talking about cocaine. Like, it's like the most interested I've ever seen Donald Trump in another person. It's an amazing interview.
And that is the thing. There's this real fight for what it means to be a man happening at both of these conventions. I mean, you described like the RNC as this manosphere, Hulk Hogan ripping off his shirt. There was, a lot of kind of
That was
go
the highlight.
macho.
That was amazing.
But then here, there's a different kind of masculinity. It's like the kind of who married well of America.
The wife guys.
They're the wife guys. It's like a perfect conference for you to be at, Ben. I feel like you're a wife guy. Like, this is like a convention for you.
Fit right in.
Fit right in. But it's so sweet to see Doug Emhoff and all these men, Barack Obama. I'm the only person who's stupid enough to speak after my wife, This head to head, these bubbles, like one of them has to give. And we won't know probably till November 5th because it's so hard to see outside of your own view when it comes to here. But one person who I think does a good job of that is our guest, Tommy Vietor, because when he was an Obama staffer, was early on to this kind of like Fox News is building this bubble engineering system over here. And Democrats need something in response to that. And in some ways, maybe the Pod Save America guys have built that.
Yeah. I don't think the Pod Save America guys would like to be compared to Fox, nor would I. Do I think Fox would particularly like to be compared to them? But they have built a really vibrant democratic media ecosystem.
We'll take a quick break and we'll be back with Tommy Vietor.
This week in our branded segment with Google, I talk with Google's VP of Marketing, Josh Spanier, about modern marketing. Josh, you're now hosting your own podcast, Modern Marketers with Think with Google. How's it going?
It's going. I didn't realize that hosting a podcast was so hard. It's not easy. So kudos to you for Mixed Signals, because I'm really enjoying your podcast, but I know it's not easy to make this thing happen.
Yeah, I'm an absolute amateur. I've failed at this twice in the past, so I'm hoping third time is the charm. But it is going well. And the title, Modern Marketers, what does modern marketing mean to you?
So modern marketing is really a recognition that the world has changed enormously just in the last 5 years. The digital transformation of our culture, of our society, of our content and our media means that we are all engaging with the world in very different ways. And our marketing industry has not always kept up. We've always been a couple of steps behind. And the old Mad Men model, if it ever worked, certainly doesn't work now. So what I've been doing is meeting with CMOs and founders and CEOs and really talking about how to be progressive in how to engage people in the things that they're interested in, where they're interested in them, not the way we have historically tried to broadcast our message out to the world.
Tell me more, Josh.
Some of the principles of modern marketing are really thinking beyond campaigns that have a stop and a start. That's not how any of us really live our lives. It's actually having a much more of a 365 days a year and a 360-degree mentality. I was at Target over the weekend, and I know it sounds small, but Target's till receipts have marketing messages on them which are in line with their overall marketing programs. It's a small little thing, but it shows me that someone at Target is thinking about all the surfaces, all the places and spaces I interact with their brand, and they're using that to either give me useful information or make me feel better about shopping at Target. It's just a clever little way of bringing the brand to life, often with a bit of surprise and delight. And it's not tied to Christmas Day or Black Friday or any other shopping moment. It's just tied to you're a customer and here's a way for us to engage with you.
It's interesting because that's a print technology. I think people think of contemporary marketing as sort of receding increasingly into the phone. Is that true, or is it broadening out?
The phone is a brilliant tool and we carry them all with us, and we're scared about our battery life. But you're absolutely right. For me, modern marketing is really recognizing the audiences where they are and what they're into. If you are a incredibly well-read, learned podcast host and editor-in-chief of a major technology and news site, your media consumption is going to be very skewed to certain platforms, certain technologies, and I should look to engage and connect with you there. I'm pretty sure that that same person's parents have a very different media consumption. It's not one size fits all. It's actually about understanding who these people are, as marketers always try to do, and engaging in interesting and relevant ways versus browbeating them with lots of money and lots of expensive TV ads, which no one really believes anyway anymore.
So Ben, Tommy Vietor is one of the hosts of Pod Save America, a co-founder of Crooked Media, and the author of Democracy or Else: How to Save America in 10 Easy Steps. Oh, I didn't know it was that easy. But
So easy. Wow.
you gotta get the book.
Gotta buy that book.
But before all that, he was an insider in the Obama world. He served as deputy press secretary for U.S. Senate candidate Barack Obama. And then he became national security spokesman, assistant press secretary in the Obama White House. And you must have known him, because I feel like you guys are close to contemporaries, if not contemporaries.
Yeah, I think I met Tommy when he was the spokesman for Obama's campaign in Iowa in 2007. Yes, I've known him a lot through the years. And he does sort of embody this reality that in American politics, that politics is the media business and vice versa. And these things just constantly run together, and the people and the ideas flow very freely between media and politics. And he's now sitting kind of right at the intersection.
And he is like also somebody who's had a pivotal role in this election in particular, because early on, the Pod Save America guys, I mean, like, when you, Ben, were interviewing Joe Kahn, the editor of the New York Times, about the rift between the Biden administration and the New York Times, was kind of on the side of the administration, right? The Pod Save America guys were like, why are we being overly scrutinizing of President Biden when there's this existential threat to democracy, and hey, the other guy's old too, right?
Yeah, they had Biden's back until they didn't.
And then they saw that debate. Like, a lot of Americans were like, maybe we need to do better. We have to remember that Pod Save America really grew out of Hillary
Yeah, and
not winning, right? So they're probably haunted by that to some extent.
yeah, and they have a level of power and relevance. It means that the Tommy and his colleagues on that podcast played, I think, a meaningful role in pushing Biden out.
And that earned them the thinly veiled ire of the Biden campaign, which, in a fundraising email, described the kind of consortium of naysayers as, quote, your panicked aunt, your MAGA uncle, or some self important podcasters. Real rift. And yet, here we are. It's like crazy what a difference a couple months makes because we're here at this happy convention. Tommy Vietor, I imagine, is a hero. And, things seem back on track for the Democratic Party.
All water under the bridge.
Let's have Tommy join us. Hi, Tommy. Great to have you. How are you?
It's great to be here. I'm good. For some reason, we thought it was a good idea to record after all the speeches, which in hindsight was very dumb.
That's why you're complaining on Twitter about the speech length, because you just want to record earlier.
Yeah, I mean, that was funny. I did complain about the speeches going too long. I just want members of Congress to realize this is not about them and this is supposed to be about Kamala Harris. But good luck with that, I guess.
Yeah, you should have told Barack Obama that in 2004.
Hey, he kept it tight, Ben. He kept that thing tight.
Turned out that convention was about him, though, not about John Kerry.
That's true enough.
But Tommy, I was thinking back, to when I met you and we were. It's funny because I thought you were young and I was old, but I think I was like 24 and you were 22 or something. At on the 07-08 race, and and you were like a stressed out staffer in Denver in 08.
Yeah.
Now you're this like huge Democratic media star. You're among the people who pushed to get Biden out and Kamala in. And I'm curious, like, what is it like to be Tommy Vietor, at the United Center here?
Yeah, I mean, Democratic media star is like the best player on the JV basketball team, but thank you for the kind words. I mean, listen, this is so funny because it's like there's 20 years of nostalgia in that room. There's people I worked with in 2004 and 2008 in the White House and seen over the years. And then to the extent that like this doing Pod Save America has created some notoriety for us, all of the people who might recognize you are in that room. So I definitely had an interaction yesterday where I saw someone, she looked familiar. I ran up, gave her a hug. We talked for 3 minutes, and then she said, "Well, it was great to meet you."
Oh,
like, oh boy.
So basically, speaking of that, what do you think you guys have created in Pod Save America? We're going to get to the convention. We want to talk to you about that, but back in 2020, you wrote this blog about how Democrats kind of need to disavow Fox News. They had played too nice with Fox News was one of your arguments. I'm sure you remember it with all your blog posts that you've ever written, Tommy. Mm-hmm. And two, you said they kind of need to build out their own media environment, like that you said Biden's team should develop closer ties with progressive outlets like The Nation, Young Turks, and yes, Crooked Media. Looking back, do you think Biden has done that successfully? And do you think that's allowed him to elude kind of the national establishment press?
I mean, we never got an interview with him, so they certainly didn't cultivate us. I don't know that YT got an interview either. I think that the Biden team, I mean, Joe Biden does never listen to a podcast in his life and wouldn't know who we are and doesn't care what we say.
Oh, he knows who you are. You're those like parts of some secret Obama conspiracy against him.
Well, there is that.
Exactly. Did you not read the fundraising email where he was like you might have heard from your panicked aunt or some self-important podcasters?
Self-important podcasters. Listen, well, again, I don't think Joe Biden read that email. I think that was Rob Flaherty on his staff, and I didn't see Rob yesterday, but a couple of the other guys did, and they're like, "How you doing? It's your favorite self-important podcasters," and like they laughed it off. It's like no big deal. Here's the thing. First of all, on the media piece, I think that there is a well-funded conservative media infrastructure funded by billionaires often, like the Federalists and all these news outlets, because they are viewed as political weapons. And I think Donald Trump really did empower those kinds of outlets. They gave them scoops. They gave them access in ways that like progressive media is not treated that seriously. Like you don't see Joe Biden doing exclusives in the Oval Office with Slate or with us. It's like it's the mainstream media. It's the New York Times. Like he cares what Fareed Zakaria says and Tom Friedman. He doesn't care about us. So that's one piece. And so like maybe they cocooned him and kept him away from the press, but it wasn't because they were just doing progressive outlets.
Yeah, I wonder if it wouldn't be a favor to places like the Times too, if there was a more effective progressive media, because the Times is in this funny dance where it's the voice of the Democratic Party and it wants to be independent of the Democratic Party. And if you guys could just be the, political weapon, they would maybe be freed of a bit of that obligation in a way. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, there's also this odd distinction, if you look at one page, we are nonpartisan, just the facts. And then if you flip to another page in the newspaper, it's all opinion. And like that didn't make sense, but I think less so in a online world probably.
Right, on one page we're independent. On the other hand, Ezra Klein literally runs the Democratic Party now.
Yeah, and he's totally yassified. He got a glow up. That suit looks great.
Yeah.
The beard is coiffed.
Am I detecting jealousy here, Tommy?
No, I just got calls from multiple news outlets asking me about Ezra's power and his yassification, and I'm happy for him.
What do you think?
Listen. I think that he was early making an argument that Joe Biden should step aside. I think he deserves credit for that. David Axelrod was too. Our show, we got there, but it was after watching the debate, and I think like anyone with eyeballs probably felt the same way. I think there were some people in Washington who had ties to the Democratic Party who didn't say what they really thought because of those obligations. I think we all have good intentions, and I think like there's a lot of coming together at this event.
There is a lot of coming together, but does it feel real to you? Does it feel sustainable?
I think it's sustainable through the election. I mean, listen, does Joe Biden feel good about what happened? No, I'm sure he's furious.
One thing that I have felt through this cycle, and that you must have felt for a minute, was this, like what, I think some of my friends on Twitter, which we're all trying to escape, call blue MAGA. But just this sense of like this really vitriolic, loud attempt to kind of enforce a Democratic Party discipline.
Yes.
To, as one person told you on X, to rally your troops and get your shit together and stop pontificating. But like get in line. And I am curious if Democrats are, like if you see the party developing its own kind of shouty base. I don't know, is that you're a political guy. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's like a function of online media world. I think that there were some very loud, very aggressive voices bludgeoning anyone who suggested that Joe Biden should drop out of the race. I mean, frankly, their arguments were often absurd. Like people were saying that we were sexist and racist for suggesting that Joe Biden should go and then maybe Kamala Harris should be the nominee. Not sure how you make that mental gymnastics work. So I think there is a blue MAGA thing, but they were just so not representative of the rest of the country. I mean, you look at polling now and it's like 90% of Democrats are psyched.
There was also this conspiracy theory around all of this, and a kind of desire to understand the mechanics, the strategy of the Nancy Pelosi, the Obamas, the Clintons. How was it all working behind the machine? And, Biden campaign playing catch up a little bit on that. And Ben and I, right after the debate, we actually were talking about what sway you, Tommy, had in the party, in particular with the Obamas. And we're going to play you a clip from that episode and then ask you to settle the score.
Oh, no.
And I imagine that the administration will be watching the polls as much as they're listening to the conversation, or as much as they're actually trying not to listen to the conversation. But that indirectly, I don't imagine that someone like former President Obama doesn't pay attention to what the Pod Save America guys are saying, even if the Biden administration would like not to.
So that's an empirical question. I do not know if Barack Obama is listening to Tommy Vietor's podcast, but maybe one of them can call us and tell us.
I imagine President Obama is like playing basketball, listening to that podcast, listening to some cool tunes on Spotify, reading a book, hanging with Michelle. This is my imagination of post-presidential life.
So tell us, does he tune in?
I would love to say or believe that he tunes in. I don't think he really knows what we do for a living or has ever listened. He's been on the shows. So last night we were walking down to the floor to see the speeches, and someone pops out of an office, and it's this guy who I couldn't see, but he was like, "Come here," and he grabs Dan Pfeiffer and he brings him in, and we all just followed him like, "Where are we going?" And all of a sudden we're in Obama's little hold room, and we're all just kind of like goofing around and talking for a while. And it is, again, based on that conversation, clear to me that he does not totally know what a podcast is or what we do or listen. So I don't think he needed to hear from us. And this idea that like we were the mouthpieces for the Obama world is nuts.
By the way, our producers do want us to clarify that Barack Obama knows what a podcast is and also had his own podcast called The Renegades. I think he was just being hyperbolic.
You don't need to know what a podcast is to have your own podcast. I literally experienced this.
Ben doesn't know what we're doing here right now.
He did have a podcast. He did one with Bruce Springsteen, right? Yeah.
Yes.
I think he also had He also had a deal at Spotify, so I've clearly completely overstated the matter. I think my point is he's way, way less plugged into the day-to-day of like the political cut and thrusts than we are, and he's actually always been that way.
Right. We're going to spin it forward now and talk a little bit about, where do we go from here? You guys were ahead of the curve in building Pod Save America. You were ahead of the curve on what has been this complete fragmentation of media, declining trust in traditional media sources, just social media taking off in such a different way. And now we live in this kind of what we've called a meme world on this show. And just the idea that Kamala is giving really good meme right now. How much stock do you put in the memification of Kamala? Do you think, like the unity of this party, this can stay the course for, 70 plus days until election day?
I mean, I think so. Listen, I have a lot of like political junkie friends, but my wife is not that. She's a normal person, and I have a lot of other people in my life who only text me like once every 6 months about politics, and I'm hearing from all of them. Like Joe Biden was getting destroyed on TikTok. It was his worst platform, and Kamala Harris is not only getting original, like organic, positive TikTok content being created about her, but she's overwhelming the Donald Trump news that's coming out. So I think like it's a great shot in the arm. I don't think it's going to be sustainable at this level. Like Michelle Obama got at that in her speech. Like there's going to be dark days.
Right.
And we're seeing a lot of public polling that I think is too rosy. Like you're seeing some of the super PACs leaking out that actually things are a lot tighter, and I think that makes sense. So I still think this is like a coin flip election, and it's a toss-up. There will be some, like the Republicans will find something nasty to do, like the swift boat Tim Walz, or I don't know, some horrible criminal justice problem from the San Francisco days. But I don't know, I think it's a good place to be right now. It's a good place to be for 70-something days or whatever.
I mean, she's created this sort of totally controlled media space where she's just producing all this content. People love it. I mean, I find it annoying that she hasn't bothered talking to the media, and I think it's now created a situation where her first interview is like live or die for her. Do you think that was a mistake?
Do you think she's really so, Ben? I think there've been times when like
I always think give a lot of interviews and the stakes are lower. That's in fact what Trump did.
Well, I think there have been times when Obama or any candidate kind of like gives the press the Heisman completely and just doesn't talk to them, and they get so mad. But I feel like she's been letting air out of that balloon by walking over to the pool and taking a couple questions sporadically. No? Or do you think that doesn't do it?
A little bit. Maybe she's sort of just managing to keep that at a low boil. Maybe that makes sense.
She's doing that off the record.
Right. She's talking them off the record, which helps too. But I guess it's funny because we were just saying like the Obama lesson of all this online nonsense and media chatter is not real life. It actually is that. I wonder if that is still true, because the other thing we just said is that TikTok is totally real life. And I'm curious how I think the world has changed in some ways, but how do you think about social media now versus 4, 8, 12 years ago?
Well, I think like 8 years ago for me, social media was Twitter, and it was basically a chat room for a bunch of political nerds trying to shape each other's opinions. And now I think TikTok, like, I don't know about you guys, but my wife and I, we watch less like Netflix or HBO shows because we're just consuming TikTok. And I think it's just the means through which people consume a lot more information, political, funny, whatever these days. But also, I mean, have you guys noticed Trump has been so smart about the media he's doing? He just did Theo Von's podcasts.
Why is that smart?
I mean, it's smart because they want to reach young men who they think they can peel off, especially young men of color, black men. And they know that those people are not reading Politico Playbook, but they might like Theo Von. They might like Bryson DeChambeau's golf YouTube page. They might like Ultimate Fighting and being with Dana White is cool, and Jake Paul and that kind of crowd. Like so smart.
But the Logan Paul, the Aiden Ross on Kick, the Elon Musk, endorsement, the interview, et cetera, much delayed, but just still happened. How much attention do you pay to that? Because being here in Chicago, I feel a little bit like, split screened, a little bit like this is this bubble. And how do you tap into that?
I think conventions are mostly for partisans, and they're mostly about whipping up your people, and you're not hitting a ton of persuadable voters. I think the biggest divide in all of politics is between like freaks like us who read about politics every hour or every day at least, and like normal people who check in once a month. And if you can hit that voter through the Theo Von podcast or Barstool Sports or something like that is key. And there's just what we're seeing writ large is this huge gender gap. Democrats are doing better with women, Republicans are doing better with men, and that's particularly acute now among Gen Z. And I think that's why Trump's strategy is smart, because he's hitting those Gen Z voters and he's getting to them where they consume information, which is not NewYorkTimes.com or whatever. It's like not legacy media, it's social.
On the gender stuff, I mean, though it seems like in the last couple of days of this convention, it has felt femme in a way, like it feels very female forward. At the same time, there's a kind of redefinition of masculinity. I think you saw last night with Doug Emhoff and Barack Obama and kind of like men who married well, and this kind of recognition of there's a manliness and a sense of testosterone in that too, being proud of yourself, being proud of your partner. Do you think that's going to help move as a comms person, when you put your comms hat on, do you think that's effective?
I do think, I think it's effective. I think it's meaningful. I think it's a message that young men need to hear, because otherwise you're hearing Andrew Tate and just some of the most vile people in public life, like talking about women in ways that we should not. I think that Tim Walz could be a secret weapon here. I interviewed him back in February of this year, and I was like, okay, this guy's cool. He's a DGA chair, but like, who is he as a human being? He's in the military for 24 years. He's a high school football coach. So I asked him about like what defense he ran. We like talked shop about football for a minute, and that got picked up everywhere. And I think if I was the Harris-Walz campaign, I would have Tim Walz talking to Pat McAfee's show on ESPN. I'd have him at Barstool. I would have him trying to reach all these kind of like Trump/RFK curious dudes who are just hearing that guys want to yell at you about your pronouns and cancel you and tell you you can't like do the things you want to do, or that they feel aggrieved. Young white men feel very aggrieved, fairly or unfairly. That's seemingly how they feel. And I think Walz needs to speak to them and kind of like course correct that the Democrats aren't the caricature that Trump paints of us. Like, Republicans popularized the word cuck. You do with that information what you will. I think we have some work to do.
Ben's like, cuck. I gotta look up cuck. But keep your comms hat on for a second. What could go wrong for Kamala? As you said, like a big message of this convention and what you've just said is like, this will be a tight race. Don't get too happy, like Hillary 2016 kind of situation, right? Don't assume that that's done and dusted. What are a few things that people should watch out for, things that could go wrong, particularly on the comms and strategy side?
I mean, I think Ben's point is right, that the longer you wait to do interviews, the more they can kind of take on importance that may or may not be real or sort of impact the narrative if they go badly. So I do think, the best way out is through there and just getting a bunch of reps and doing stuff. I think the broader problem right now is like Harris did a rally on Tuesday in Milwaukee and she was speaking, and then someone screamed at her, "You've already won." And she was like, "What are you talking about?" And I think people need to understand that this is so close. It's a 50-50 race. The Electoral College does not favor Democrats. She's a black woman in America with all the headwinds that come from that identity. And so we need to do two things, like take nothing for granted, but also, what Michelle Obama got at last night, which is like, believe that anything is possible. Believe that she can win. Know that this is possible, but you got to do the work. And I think we just got to do the work.
I mean, she said she's going to do an interview. Where is she going to do an interview before the end of the month? Where do you think? Is she coming to Pod Save America?
We'd love to have her. Why not do like a big CBS 60 Minutes sit down, right? Like, that's the OG, how you hit the old folks. Do you do a New York Times? I don't think so.
What do you think, Ben?
I think she's going to stiff the New York Times all the way to the, probably, right?
You think she is, Ben?
It helps reestablish their independence of the Democratic Party. They should, I think they'll be very grateful for that. She'll probably do an Ezra. Honestly, she's going to do an Ezra.
She's going to do it. She should do an Ezra Klein interview.
Clearly. Right.
I mean, I would think about a conservative space to put her in, show her mixing it up. Like, why not?
Where would you put her? What's a conservative space you'd put her in?
Just like sit down with Brett Baier or something, you'd put her on there?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a hard question. I think you want to show that you're tough, that you're willing to mix it up, but you want someone that's intellectually honest. I would probably want it to be live and not taped and not edited. So I don't know. I mean, she's probably not going on Steve Bannon's War Room podcast, but there's something in between Pod Save America and that.
Where do you feel she stands as a candidate in the kind of policy world. Do you even think we know yet? Do you think voters can know? And can they find out in the next 70 odd days?
I think she's pretty pragmatic. I mean, I think like having a 70-day campaign is a pretty incredible opportunity to skip a year and a half of horrible policy speeches and forums and reporter questions.
Yeah,
and
scrutiny.
It's weird because she owns the Biden agenda, right? I mean, she'd signed on to their second term agenda, but she's smartly and slowly walking away from pieces of it. Like, I hope she gets way to the left of Biden on Gaza. I think his policy has been objectively terrible, and it's time for a break from it.
I mean, if Kamala was feeling any pressure on Gaza before this convention, I suspect she's feeling none now, right?
Yeah, it's a bummer. I mean, I ran into some really great activists inside the hall yesterday, like a woman who had just come out of Gaza, a doctor who was providing medical care.
Is it Tanya Hajjajad?
Yes. And we were talking, and it's just like, they just seemed exhausted and defeated and trying to figure out the path forward. Because I think what's happening is, look, you're at a big party. You're at a big party for Democrats. And in their mind, this is partly a party for Joe Biden and the Gaza policy. And they're like, well, I've lost a dozen friends in Gaza. And I can understand how weird that feels. But for Democrats, we have like a whole basket of things we care about and want to support Kamala for. And I think there's just, Democrats they're not willing to accept anything that might impede Harris's success right now. They're like, let's have that conversation later. And I don't think that's fair to say to activists, but I think that's the message.
Yeah, in some ways, this nomination switch has allowed the Democratic Party to elide this issue, which seemed, much more catastrophic a couple months ago than it feels right now in Chicago, not the facts on the ground.
Yeah, and it could get worse.
So, a last question. Back in the day, you said that if Hillary won, Pod Save America would have just been a hobby, but instead it became existential. It became, your whole life in a way, or a big part of your professional life, certainly, until now, 2024. So if Kamala wins and the Trump threat goes away, do you retire, Tommy?
No, we don't retire. I mean, Ben lobbed this question at me back in 2020. He was like, boy, what happens to Pod Save America in 2020? You guys are dead, huh? I was like, oh boy, not writing back to that text. Not engaging with this one.
Is that what you do? Just don't reply to Ben?
Yeah,
That's
smart communicators just don't reply.
Duck and cover. Our numbers ebb and flow with the news cycle. Like, I think our downloads basically doubled from before and after the debate. I don't think that says anything about us. I think just people are much more interested in what's happening right now because it went from like static to exciting. I think in a Harris administration, there would be the election. Maybe we'll have an insurrection. You never know. I think the first 100 days are interesting. So I think like there is a place people want to know what's going on in the world. Like, we have a bunch of political junkies who are interested, they come in and out, but like they're interested all the time in what's happening in Washington. They watch MSNBC, et cetera. So we'll be here.
Well, Tommy, I'm sure you have adoring fans to go pretend you recognize at the convention.
No, who have to pretend that they recognize him. That was the story.
That's right.
They have
That's
to
right.
pretend they recognize
And thank you so much for taking all this time.
This was very fun. Thank you.
There's something really interesting. When we were talking about the sort of blue MAGA and the committed and sort of engagement-based social media partisans who are yelling at you about actually Joe Biden is fine and everything's going great. And I do think one of the things about elections, there's this winnowing at this point in the election when there are people who have found audiences and engagement by like almost Alex Jones level departures from reality. Nothing that you see is real. There are conspiracies everywhere that this interview was faked. These are really just clips. And you saw it with that kind of Biden dead ender moment. And the problem is at some point it makes contact with reality and explodes. And I saw this today actually on the right too. There's a very influential social media personality called House Inhabit who you and I were fascinated with, right?
Yes, of course. Jessica Reed Krause, yeah.
And Max wrote a great profile of her as this sort of archetype of this slightly new social media. But she has also totally lost touch with reality now in a way that is making her irrelevant. She sent something out today about how, like, BlackRock-driven conspiracies and videos and this and that. And she's talking to the, what was it, 10% of people are interested in RFK, and today is a 5%. And 2.5% of the people who read that are going to be like, I'm out here. And there's just a point at which you try to maintain your social media alternate reality. And one of the things about elections is that real reality starts to exert some gravity too, and some of that stuff starts to implode.
I don't know. Like, I mean, you just said she's just become irrelevant or she's becoming irrelevant. I don't know. Or is she becoming more relevant to her audience and she's pulling them toward a direction?
She's becoming less relevant to electoral politics,
But what are electoral politics?
moving people to the polls to decide who's president. You can have
No,
a big following. You can sell lots
yeah.
of pills, as Alex Jones has shown. You can
Yeah.
sell so many, like, vitamin pills
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Supplements. Yeah.
by saying delusional nonsense. But there's a point at which it starts to lose connectivity with real politics, I think.
I don't know. I think the culture is like where the ball is right now in a lot of ways. Like what's going on with Kamala and the memes. Like we're talking about it being in the culture, and so these people with massive followings and kind of loose tethers to reality, if at all. I mean, there's a reason why I think they stay relevant and they kind of further polarize their own audience and drive them. She will probably be a key decider on whether the RFK people, if and when he pulls out of the race or isn't allowed to be in the race, whether they move to Trump or whether they don't turn out or whether they go to Harris.
Yeah, she may right but she maybe wind up being influential in a tiny fringe of the fringe, and not that the fringe doesn't matter. Jill Stein might have decided the election, but I do think you're seeing a convergence back toward a competition for suburban women in the middle, and the fringe being pushed back to the fringe.
We'll see. I think we'll know a lot more after this election because I don't think we know how these like 18 to 21-year-old gamers are going to vote, actually, this kind of crowd that Trump is paying so much attention to. The crypto boys, right? Like we don't know how the crypto audience is going to vote. And we don't even know what percentage of Americans, whether they turn out. And I think that's like a bet that Trump is making. And that's the wild card in this election, for me at least. I have no idea, even having some connectivity to that world and seeing a little bit inside of it. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, no, I guess we will, yeah, well, and everything that we say in this podcast, we can record and look back and laugh at what idiots we were, right?
I know.
As you pointed out last time I tried to make a prediction.
But as long as we disagree, one of us will be right. We'll see. One of us will be right. One of us will be wrong. Anyways, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with Blind Spots and Max Tunney. All right, we're back with Blind Spots and we have Max Tunney here. Max, it's so good to see you.
It's good to be here, as always.
I didn't see Max at all yesterday. Where were you, Max?
Yesterday, I went and took some pictures that they asked me to take for GQ about the style and what people were wearing and what I was wearing at the convention.
And nobody here is wearing Paul Mescal short shorts, to be clear, at the DNC.
Unfortunately, people are not wearing shorts at this. I was actually I thought about bringing a pair of shorts that I liked and that are like some pretty nice, like black seersucker, like kind of breezy, like a little bit baggy kind of shorts.
Formal shortwear is so in. I thought about wearing a shortwear suit, but I didn't bring one to
the thing is that the people who are wearing the best menswear at the convention are obviously women, like, and particularly queer women are like wearing like incredible menswear here at the DNC. But so sadly, no shorts.
I would say these are blind spots for me. So thank you.
We're here. So Max, you have come here to tell us, to regale us with a blind spot. What are we missing in this kind of fever dream for Democrats of the Democratic National Convention? What is being missed?
One thing that I saw was the news this week that Chick-fil-A apparently is launching its own streaming platform. This is according to Deadline. The fast food firm has been working with a number of major production companies, including some of the studios, to create family-friendly shows, particularly in the unscripted space. It is also in talks to license and acquire content. This is a blind spot, obviously, for many of us who feel that we already have too many streaming services to choose from. I don't know. Would you guys download the Chick-fil-A streaming platform, replace Netflix?
I'm like, is it going to have? I mean, they should really. I feel this is kind of political because isn't Chick-fil-A a little political? For their conservative stances on marriage, on gay marriage, et cetera.
They're conservative coded mostly because they were under massive attack from liberals because their founder gave money to conservative causes. But I don't think they, as a company, aside from closing on Sundays, are giving out Donald Trump flyers with the chicken and are wildly popular, incredibly successful brand. But I think that's sort of that energy of a place that's closed Sundays. I mean, I kind of like the idea, and I can kind of totally see the meeting where they're selling this to themselves and to other people. But of course, the history of like non-media companies dabbling in media like this. I mean, I remember when Starbucks hired an editor-in-chief, and there's a long history of this, and it inevitably 100% of the time ends in tears.
You don't still get Starbucks Magazine. Great content.
So I really look forward to both the rise and the fall of the Chick-fil-A streaming service.
I will say, I could imagine Chick-fil-A, first of all, what they should really do is license Amelia's show, The Chicken Shop Date. That's what they should do.
Oh,
That would
see,
be,
that's
that's one of the
brilliant.
#1 interviews, or the hot ones. They should buy that from Complex and Vivek.
That is a great, wholesome idea. This is very literal, Naima. This is very chicken themed.
I think, program what you know. And the third thing, I think they could also have a show, which is like the Seventh Heaven reboot. Do you ever watch that show, Seventh Heaven?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I do. I definitely think there's a large crossover in audience between people who they want to watch that, download their streaming service.
Yeah.
And the former Seventh Heaven audience, the ABC Family audience. I guess the thing that's interesting to me is and what Deadline kind of points out in their article is that Chick-fil-A has actually been has made content before. They've made, I think scripted programming. The weird decision here is the decision to get into the distribution side of it. Why they would want to, build tech and distribute these shows themselves is somewhat mind-boggling.
They've made, wait, what you say they've made content before?
Yeah,
Have I been secretly,
yeah.
unbeknownst, watching Chick-fil-A stuff?
You haven't watched a Chick-fil-A film? You got to get the Chick-fil-A film and the Starbucks Magazine, order some food, and have a night in, Ben.
Deadline says Chick-fil-A, which operates over 3,000 restaurants in the U.S., has previously produced content for its own site before, including Stories of Evergreen Hills, a series of short animated films. It is also diversified into other areas, including making children's puzzles and games under its Penny Cake brand.
I mean, this is just Deadline repeating words somebody said to them. I think,
This is a press
describing
release
some
being
marketing
printed,
video
yeah.
as Titanic.
But if they're going to actually, but why would they actually, I don't understand why they would actually want to, they're going to go to meetings with, Roku and,
No, obviously it's a terrible idea. They're in such a good business. They're in, the fast food franchising business. They're just moving so much chicken every day, and they're getting into this, other complicated, fast-changing, low-margin, is it tech, is it culture? But I mean, it's obviously an unbelievably terrible idea, but it's going to be incredibly fun to watch both on the way up and the way down.
I feel like it needs some original Max Tanya reporting, because I feel like there could be some real opportunity.
Do you think there's a semaphore partnership opportunity that we're not thinking of?
I feel like the Semaphore movie should be distributed on the Chick-fil-A network.
I could figure out some way to explain that our sponsored segment by Chick-fil-A is obvious. Chick-fil-A, is a media company, and so our sponsored Chick-fil-A segment is very, very relevant.
The Think with Chick-fil-A?
Don't tell Think with Google.
Just
Don't tell
kidding.
Think with Google.
Can we just, I think a good ending for this would be, Max, do you think the people in that meeting were better dressed than the people at the DNC?
There's no question, because the bar is so incredibly low that there's no question that the Chick-fil-A, anyone who's in a business setting is probably looking better than your average Hill staffer, wrinkled journalist who's here. So yes, I think
That's
they probably
me.
are looking better. No,
Ouch.
it's not. It's not you, Ben. You're a part of the sophisticated media elite.
Yeah.
Who are dressed very well, like myself and Naima.
Yes. Yeah, you're just like us, Ben.
You don't need to lie to me.
All right. Thanks for listening to Mixed Signals from Semaphore Media. We are off next week, but we'll be back with a new episode on September 6th. Our show is produced by Max Tani, Allison Rogers, Sheena Ozaki, Noah Friedman, and Andrea Lopez Cruzado.
And we want to say a special farewell to our producer, Alan Haberchak. He's moving on from Mixed Signals. We wanted to thank him for helping us get this thing off the ground.
Alan is critical to everything we've done. Thank you, Alan. Special thanks also to Britta Galanis, Chad Lewis, Rachel Oppenheim, Anna Pizzino, Garrett Wiley, and Jules Zern. Our engineer is Rick Kwan. Our theme music is by Billy Libby. And our public editor is obviously Lil Jon.
Politics, media business, all runs together.
If you like Mixed Signals, please follow us wherever you get your podcasts, and feel free to review us.
And if you're watching on YouTube, give us a like and subscribe to Semaphore's channel.
And don't forget to sign up for the Semaphore Media newsletter publishing every Sunday evening.
Got any scoops for us this week, Max?
Actually do, yeah.
Yeah, what do you have? What do you got? What you got?
I can't. I don't want.
We got a lot of talk. We have a lot to
Yourself
talk
on the
about. We got to get
podcast.
off here and scheme.
We do.